welcome to House 317. My name is Rodney, and I'm joined here by permanent roommates. Josh, you want to give yourself a quick intro?
What's going on, guys? I'm Josh. I like Spider-Man a lot.
There you go. Brandon, what's up?
What's up? I'm Brandon, and I just like all things comics, period. Love it.
And like I said, my name is Rodney. I'm really into Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Marvel in general, but I'm open to all comic books. Doctor Doom, yes. Doom is just great. But, so we're starting this YouTube channel, right? And
yeah,
so
apparently.
So just for me, at least, I like comics, right? Comics, movies, all of the like. It's a little different when you talk to people that don't like them, right? They are very superficial on what they see. And they think that, it's all of the flashiness and the nice pages and nice cartoons. But it goes above that, right? And so we talk about things that in comics in general and the movies are really doing a good job. And certainly the episodes that are out now do a really good job of explaining underlying themes. And so that's what I'm most interested about when we talk about comics and when we talk about movies and when we talk about these episodes that we're going to be talking about on Disney Plus and the other platforms that may be releasing them. Why do you want to start this channel? Why do you want to talk to folks out there in YouTube land about all of this?
When we talk about why we're here and why we're doing this, I think about us three specifically. So for many years, we'd love going to the premiere movies and getting there 12 o'clock midnight, enjoying that, having our conversations afterwards. And, given this past year, we really weren't able to do that. So everything was via text and just trying to catch things at the same time. Exactly. Oh, deep diving into theories, WandaVision especially. Goodness. One day we'll get Mephisto. One day. But, that's why, we're really starting this channel is because it gives us an opportunity to reconnect and to talk about these live, with our fellow roommates and to hear their points of view as well. But, I know we enjoy that conversation. So, I just like the idea of sharing those thoughts with everybody else and just getting deep into it.
That's what she said.
I want to get into, when we're looking at episodes like we're going to be talking about today, like Falcon and Winter Soldier, and unpacking some of those themes that episode 1 brought on to us, like post-traumatic stress disorder, or things like, what is life after a veteran comes back from being deployed? Those kind of elements, human elements that make all these superheroes human so that they relate to us. And so those are the pieces that I'm super excited about. And I can't wait to just kind of, unpack all of this as we all get to talk about the episodes, movies, or whatever it is that we're talking about at the time. And so, again, want to talk about our focus for the channel. And our focus for the channel is going to be that. And we're going to talk about Mephisto, maybe, if that ends up being the big bad. And we're going to be doing recaps and just making sure that we break down these videos, break down our thoughts, and making sure that we share, again, like you said, the different perspectives that we may have. And so,
I think it's also too, obviously we're talking about Marvel stuff, but also DC stuff. Obviously Snyderverse is a big topic right now. Apparently it's popular.
Yep.
Stop right there. I'm in.
Yeah. And that Warner Brothers may be entertaining the idea further, maybe not. We don't know.
I think that's going. Yeah. But we'll talk about that later.
We'll see.
All right, so getting all of that out of the way, let's talk about episode 1, Falcon and Winter Soldier. What are your thoughts? We went from a transition from WandaVision. WandaVision was so deep on emotion. It was emotionally charged from start to finish. We talked about her being someone who was grieving, having that compounding grief element, and seeing how she processed through her grief of not only Vision, but her brother, Pietro. And so, coming from that, there was a lot of connection to her. If anyone has experienced a loss, there was a lot of connection to her on that front. And then we jump into episode 1, high action, complete change of focus. What are your feelings on that? Did we need that as an audience, becoming so emotionally tied with each episode that WandaVision brought on? Going from 9 episodes to now potentially only 6 episodes with Falcon and Winter Soldier. What are your all's thoughts on that? We'll start with Josh.
So WandaVision was, we've talked about before, I think a much needed tone shift in the MCU. And a lot of people, us included, fans, hijacked the story and turned it into multiverse, Mephisto, Quicksilver, and all these other different things when, like the director has stated after the series was over, that it was a character story about grief.
Right.
And you had mentioned that. So going through 9 episodes of grief was draining.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so being able to go from that to Falcon and Winter Soldier was kind of a shock. But I'm on board. Like, it reminds me of Captain America Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to where the series is going.
What about you, Brandon? So, taking the contrast again, episode 1, WandaVision, it was like a train. It took it a while to get going. And then you jump in again, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and it's like, bam,
right off the bat. I think there's some interest there. So you mentioned it was a good tone shift going from where we were at Endgame, very emotionally driven movie.
Yeah,
yes, yeah. and then you get this long gap there between content when Marvel's pushing things out. Here comes WandaVision. And it was a nice kind of tone shift. We get a little bit more backstory on what happens with the blip and a little bit more realistic aspect of what happens there. And, I think it was nice going from the end of WandaVision where there's high impact, a lot of different things happening there. And then you don't really dive off of that. You kind of dive right back into it, and you're still in it going into the first episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier, which I think was fantastic.
So episode 1 kind of unpacks Sam Wilson, unpacks Bucky Barnes, and what their life kind of looks like post-blip, right? And so, we get to Sam after that wonderful action sequence with the squirrel suits. That was very good.
And
very good.
The almost Iron Man-like viewpoint of Sam, I thought that was really well done.
And so when we talk about Sam Wilson and he comes back to Louisiana talking to his sister and dealing with those elements of, after deployment life, my brother was in the military. Coming back to civilian life is a thing. And then you switch over to Bucky Barnes and he's experienced a different section of that post-traumatic stress syndrome section of him kind of isolating himself, which precipitates the issue even further. What things do you think that underlying theme is going to create as we move forward in the episodes with Falcon and Winter Soldier?
I think you mentioned PTSD. I think you got to also imagine what the people that weren't blipped are feeling. Like, it's almost a reverse in the PTSD. Like, the people that were blipped came back, and it didn't feel like 5 years. It felt like just a snap of the finger, which, no pun intended.
Right.
So I'd be interested to see if they go more in depth into, like, Sam's sister and what she had to deal with, and what life was like for her and what life was like for her when people came back. I mean, it's going to be crazy to think 5 years had passed and all of a sudden your brother's back, like, out of nowhere, like, and the change of what your life was and then is, and all of a sudden people return, and, like, it's just a massive cluster.
Yeah.
100%. And I agree with you there. I mean, there's so much to unpack in that reality. And I mean, like, we don't really understand what the blip really did. Like, we get snippets of it. But then when you think about the deeper part of that, it just makes so many different things that you see happen on screen much more impactful. Like, take the Flag Smashers, for instance. Their goal is to get back to the way things were during the blip. They enjoyed the idea of the one world, everybody's unified.
Which is what Thanos, that was his whole...
Right. So a lot of interesting things there. And without getting a lot of the backstory just yet, it's going to be interesting to see how that might unpack. Like, do we start to feel sympathetic towards them? Do we not? Or do they end up just being, complete wackos at the end of the day? We don't know yet.
But you guys hit on some really good points. And so when you talk about the blip, Josh, and you talk about people that were left behind, and then you marry that with what we went through with WandaVision, there is grief there, right? Because everyone lost someone for 5 years. And so people process that as a loss because no one knew that they were coming back, right?
No, somebody back from the dead.
Yeah, back from the dead.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't bring people back from the dead. It's not a pretty picture. I don't like doing it.
All of those people grieve those folks that are now all of a sudden back. And so what is the effect on just your mentality having all of those folks coming back, those additional responsibilities coming back, and the people coming back where they fit in that new place, right? So all 3 of our wives got blipped and we moved on and now they're back. What in the world?
Thought about that. Yeah, I was
what in the world? That would be tough. And you got to imagine that at least some of those folks did something like that, right? To move on. That's just real interesting to think about. So moving on, who do we think the big bad is going to be in the show? We always, and we joke about Mephisto because everybody and their mom is talking about Mephisto when we talk about WandaVision, and that may still happen. But we are more in a reality based kind of situation when we talk about Falcon and Winter Soldier. So who do we think, the big bad is going to be in this series?
Yeah, I think it's easy to say Zemo, just because that's what's been teased. But I'm kind of hoping that's not the case. I can see them kind of possibly working together, and then him backstabbing. I mean, it's Zemo. So
see, I look at it a little bit different than that, and we get a little bit of a tease of this here in the first episode, right? So my mindset is the government powers that be. So everybody's blip bag, they're all trying to maintain control, things like that. So, Sam makes mention here in the first episode, like, every time, his equipment is messed with, per se. So you see his frustration there, and we can kind of get a hint that he's feeling unease, with what's going on there. I think, we get a little bit of that Sokovia Accord vibe still where they want to control the superheroes. And I think we even get more of that reality setting in. You can kind of see it in Sam's face. They're at the end where they announce FOCAP, which, by the way, that's our name for him. It's
FOCAP. Not Captain. It's FOCAP.
He's FOCAP.
I mean, do you think that, kind of going off FOCAP, do you think he somehow, with Marvel and the MCU, they do follow the comics, but they also make their own path? Do we think that FOCAP turns into some type of villain? Maybe not villain, but some antagonist. I'm sure he will, but like even to a deeper extent.
Possibly.
Yeah, I mean, in the comics, he is nothing like Cap, right?
Right.
So he's like hyper aggressive, very bloodthirsty. They got to make something, like he's got to make that flip.
Well, you got to think about too, like with Cap, his time in the army was much different back then than what John Walker. So the mentality of people in the military, I'm sure, are drastically different.
That's a good point.
He's going to go about it his own way, and he saw the pistol on his hip when he was introduced. So that's interesting too.
That feels like a loss in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
And just losing that what was the purest form of. I mean, almost. Cap was naive, right? In some
but
sense.
Cap had good too, though.
Yeah, he did. He did. It just feels like you lose that element of innocence almost.
Yes.
But Brandon, what's going on? What are you thinking?
I don't know. He, I know. I need to open it up. No, there's a lot to unpack with FOCAP. We get a semblance like I don't know, like he's just coming off weird, and I don't know what kind of vibe we're gonna really get from him. I'm hopeful that he stays a good guy. I'd rather him not end up being a protagonist. I think he's gonna have his faults, but I hope he doesn't end up becoming the main one. I'd rather that end up on someone like Zemo. I'd love to see, because again, he was fantastic in Civil War, so I'd love to see what he can do here. But we'll see.
We'll see. And I've seen this on a couple of YouTube channels. Thunderbolt Ross. How can they tie that into it?
If we get Red Hulk out of this, I'm going to Hulk out, but in a good way.
Yeah, that would be super interesting, right? That would be super interesting in that they tease this.
Yes.
They tease this all over the place. You talked about the power broker. They tease that in the credits. And then obviously Baron Zemo, we see that in the promos for Falcon and Winter Soldier. But it'd be nice if they just threw us a tie-in with the Hulk movie that has been out since how long ago was that movie?
That was before Iron Man.
That was a long time ago. So it'd be nice if they tied that element into it. So what has surprised you guys? So after watching episode 1, what surprised you the most out of that? What are you most interested in finding out more of? And then, what do you think about episode 2 after that?
Oh, man. So the big thing out of episode 1 that I'm really interested in is Bucky. So there's a lot of history there. And which, by the way, just him and the psychiatrist and going through all that, absolutely comical. Loved it. But the fact that she threatens him with the book, that gets me. But anyways, so to stay on track, what's really interesting about that is his backstory. So we understand his perspective, right? So he's gone from war to war to war, and then he gets like this tiny break there in Wakanda where he's actually just getting to just, White Wolf. But then he's right back into it with Endgame and Infinity War. So he really hasn't had a chance to really deal with anything. And now we get a little bit of that story where he's trying to make amends for some of the things that he's done when, obviously he didn't have control during that time, but now he's trying to make amends for that. So I really hope with this series, and we get a little bit of this with Sam too, but with him especially, I really hope we see redemption for Bucky. Like for him to feel at peace, for him to kind of get past whatever he needs to get past through this series. I really hope that for him. And by the end of it, I would love if he decided to ditch Winter Soldier and say that he was officially White Wolf. I know that was a Wakanda given name, but I would like him to do that. I think that would be really cool to see.
He brought it up in episode 2.
That's true.
He mentioned it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So talking about episode 2, let's transition to episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
And just in case you were wondering, spoiler alert, because we're talking about the episode. So if you're watching this and it's too late, I'm sorry.
That's true.
And so transitioning into episode 2, we get that initial scene of, Bucky watching that interview. That introduction for John Walker, and him kind of having sour grapes about that.
Mm-hmm.
John Walker calling him a brother almost, and like, do you even know me, dude? And so tell me a little bit about the start of this episode, what your feelings on it are, and then what Bucky's now having to deal with, because, Steve Rogers' name gets thrown out there multiple times. No one's really unpacking the greatness that was him. It's all about John Walker and how he's going to mirror that. And so tell me a little bit about your feelings about that.
Well, you mentioned mirror. The fact that the way they brought him in is very reminiscent to how they brought Steve in as Cap, as a propaganda piece.
Yep.
And that's basically what it was. That's the first thought I had when I saw him being paraded out in front of, probably millions of people watching. It just harkened back to when they brought Steve on stage in this goofy old school Captain America costume, and just being the government using him to get their agenda across. I don't know. I felt like Bucky. I wanted to punch Faux Cap in the face.
Oh yeah, like he definitely has a punchable face. 100% he does. And I have no problem saying that.
Of course.
And I think that's kind of the point now that we've been introduced to him. Like, he comes across a little smug. Like he's just like, all right, I can handle this mantle. This is going to be my persona behind it all. Like he's playing the role. And you learn a little bit about that at the beginning of the episode where they're kind of prepping before he goes up on, for the interview there.
Well, originally he just wanted to do the job that he thought he was getting, and not thinking that the press that comes with it and photos and autographs and all that, he just wants to do his job, which, can't fault the guy for.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he comes across as arrogant and like he was made for it. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can tell he's gonna let all that get to his head a little bit. You just kind of get that sense about him. So I think that's a lot of what we're gonna see. We're gonna see him just kind of pivot deeper and deeper and deeper into that.
So when we talk about Sam and really the burden that he is taking on that Cap gave him by giving him the shield, and then when we transition to that scene with Isaiah Thomas and just the emotion that's tied to, you know, what Marvel's trying to do, which is bring light a real issue that we're going through right now in America with racism and how us as a society view, you know, Black people essentially. And so they're really throwing this in our face and saying, hey, you know, this is something that in comics we need to deal with. This is something that in society we need to deal with. And really giving Sam that insight into Isaiah Thomas was the Black Captain America. And America wasn't ready for it.
It was put in jail.
And was put in jail for 30 years for it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what are your thoughts on that? Talk a little bit about the street scene and the imagery on that and what we're going through right now in America and unpack that for us.
Yeah, I think it was good to see.
I agree.
I mean, comics have done that forever, being able to have commentary on, you know, what we're facing like in real life. You know, Sam being profiled when they were just talking. I mean, albeit, you know, they got, you know, pretty loud, but the first thing they do is get out and profile Sam, and they would recognize Sam, and then act like everything's okay, like, oh, let me get an autograph type of thing. And Sam, you could see Sam as like, man, this is messed up. Like, are you for real right now?
Right.
100%.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just, I think that kind of ties, like with Isaiah, kind of ties in with Sam being hesitant about taking that mantle. Maybe he feels like the world isn't ready. Maybe it's back of his mind. The same way that, you know, I mean, the government thought that Isaiah wasn't ready.
Right. I mean, clearly, I mean, like the fact that they didn't even really go down that path for this new faux cap, you know, that they brought out, and how he's, you know, he's still, here's your, you know, standard, you know, white guy coming in to be that mantle again. Yeah. So it's very interesting to see all that happen, and man, the emotion that Isaiah had in that scene. Oh my goodness, that was incredible. Well done with the acting there, and just to see all of his frustration and all of his anger, and to hear that story of like, man, like the government made you, they gave you a role, but then you never knew about it. And like, and then just to throw him in jail, to be experimented on and everything else, just, you know, just crazy to think about, but just how much of a reality, you know, that even was, you know, back in, you know, the early parts of the different wars that we've had.
Yeah, and make no mistake, like we, and taking it back to our reality, you know, us being white, we have no clue, right? We have no idea what the profiling feels like, what, you know, one of our roommates on House 317 was Alonzo. And if you remember Alonzo and him, what's up? And him being able to share some of that with us at times and saying, you know, this is real for me today. And that was back 2000, you know, 7, 8, 9. And so maybe not 7. And so, so I mean, we don't know what that's like. But watching it on the screen and really getting that visceral feeling of what Sam is experiencing with that interaction with the cops and how quickly that escalated. And nothing was happening, but that escalated very quickly. You know, that we don't know what that's like, and they want to address that, which is good. And I think, like you said, comics has always addressed real issues that are going on with either government or society or anything like that. And I appreciate the fact that they're bringing those pieces up. But transitioning over into the scene with the psychiatrist with Sam and Bucky there, right? Interlocking these. I love
Yes.
Closer.
Well, which way?
Why do you have to have your legs open? You know what? Fine. Here. You happy now?
All right.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
We're locked
That's
in
fine.
now.
It's a little close.
It's very close. That's what you wanted, right?
Guys,
Is, Sam's unpacking everything that we just talked about, all of that Isaiah Thomas piece. Mm-hmm. And then they're there talking about Bucky becoming vulnerable in that moment and speaking to the fact that if, Sam or if Steve Rogers was wrong about Sam taking on the Captain America mantle, then he's also wrong about Bucky being able to, turn a leaf on his life and be the good guy. Mm-hmm. So unpack that a little bit for us, and where are we going with that? Is that the redemption piece that you're talking about?
Right. No, I definitely think that opened the door to that transition for him. I mean, like, to see him actually be the one that opened up first, and that Sam actually was the one who kept everything internal in that moment. I really expected the opposite. But to see that, I think, shows leaps and bounds for Bucky, honestly. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see that. And we're getting the sense of how much remorse he has and how much he really lets, even though he fully understands he was not in control, but he knows everything that happened. He remembers it all. So he still feels extremely guilty for it. So if he can't get past that, then, what's really in it for him? Mm-hmm. Is he doomed to live this life of war that he was bred into versus getting some of that peace that he was looking for?
I mean, I think you can see that therapy is actually helping him, because I don't think he meant to let that slip out.
Oh, no.
That was that wall coming down, because he kind of trailed off at the end.
I think he was so irritated that he just let it out.
Yeah, it was great to see. I do think that's the redemption story for him, but I don't think this is, we've talked about it before, I don't think this is a one season series.
No.
Kevin Feige's mentioned that they might possibly do multiple seasons for some of their shows, and I think this is a prime candidate for that. Possibly 3. I'm calling 3, but so I'm hoping that it continues more than just however episode 6 ends. It's a continuation.
And I agree with that. I mean, their chemistry, as both actors on and off screen, is just absolutely fantastic. You get your serious moments, your comical moments. It's a good blend, and it never feels unnatural. I mean, it's just honestly just, I kind of think about how we interact sometimes and how just fluid that could be from going from something serious to, just like that.
So now transitioning to really the end piece of episode 2, they quickly realize that what they're dealing with is super serum soldiers, right? Mm-hmm. And you get the scene there with John Walker fighting on top of the 18-wheeler. You get Bucky getting his rear end beat.
That little girl.
That little girl. And so you have 3 superheroes really struggling with these average Joe situations. And they're really kind of like, well, what's going on here? These guys are really too strong. And so they're starting to put 2 and 2 together. We may be dealing with a serum situation. And so unpack those scenes there where they start putting the 2 and 2 together. And at the very end,
Zemo. Oh, all right. Well, so very interesting there at the end. Like, we get a little sense of the power broker. Obviously, he's caught up to the Flag Smashers. And you get this piece where, like, he's obviously communicating with them and he's putting out his threats. He catches up. There's a moment there, where we get a sense of it being more of a government style entity, maybe. So very interesting there. And the fact that then everything starts to turn, we understand that it's, they've really figured out the serum aspect of it. So you see the wheels turning where they realize they have to go down a different road to really get the answers they want, because they're not going to get it going the usual route. So to hear
smashing and
kicking
their way to
exactly to little Civil War callback where you just got to go rogue a little bit there. And but to hear the name Zemo and understand that that's how we're going to be introduced to him. That's how he's going to come in. He's still in prison, which is interesting. So that only leaves the theory that if he's going to be a part of the show, he's not going to be sitting there behind that glass. Like, he's getting out, and I want to know how he gets out.
Are they going to work with him? Like, what is that going to be?
I already said they would somehow.
Okay,
they got to. I mean, and again, Zemo is an opportunist, so I think he'll play that role. and then I think we'll see him go off kilter.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll be.
I want to see off kilter.
I do too.
And not this.
I mean,
meticulous, behind the scenes type of guy that we got in Civil War.
Yeah, but I think we'll still. I do still want part of that because that's his personality, that's his training. But yeah, like it'll be interesting to see how his mindset is going to be coming out of however many years that's been since Civil War at this point.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he's definitely a mastermind, so that piece has got to come out. But if you guys want to join the conversation, please leave comments in the comment section so that we can make sure that we address all those pieces. Ring that notification bell. Subscribe if you want to listen to us, Average Joes, just talk about this kind of stuff. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Take care.
See ya.